Hi, everybody. This week we kick off a new woodworking series making replicas of furniture and accessories seen in your favorite movies and TV shows. To start, we're going to show you how to make a simple little end table found in the movie series Deadpool from the set design in Blind Al's apartment. At the end of this coffee stained polyester and plaid couch, we find a nifty little half moon end table adorned with various and sundry items. It's not going to be found in the IKEA catalog, but in Swedish it would be known as halvmune for half moon. Of course, that would sound cooler if a real Swedish person said that. From this viewpoint, we can see that it's either walnut or walnut stained on the tabletop with a tapered leading edge and some pretty basic round spindle legs. A different scene shows this to be a potentially different prop altogether, maybe a plain piece of 3/4 inch wood stock with a straight cut off 90-degree edge. I think we can up our game and do a little bit better on this project. Let's get started. Maximum effort. So I found some really terrific looking white ash, and it's 4/4 board in thickness, so it's a full inch. And I could not find a piece of lumber that was wide enough really to get me that 13-inch span, so I'm going to have to cut and glue a couple pieces together. And of course, when you get this stuff from the lumberyard, it's never going to have a straight 90-degree edge, so you're most likely going to have to run this through the table saw just to give you the clean edge to glue up. And this is a force of habit. You don't really need to put in dowels, but I like it because it helps to line up the pieces when you glue them together. And if you can read that upside down, the overall dimensions of my table are going to be 26 by 13 when I'm done cutting and trimming. I really like the wood grain of this white ash. And so now you just need a piece of wire, a piece of string, or I'm using some strapping material to carve out a half moon. And then with a jigsaw, just carefully and slowly cut out your semicircle. You betcha. And the cut wasn't too bad, so I didn't have too much cleaning up to do, but man, does this thing create a lot of dust when you move it over on the disc sander. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is I had to make a choice between the round spindle legs that you saw in the movie photo and maybe creating some square tapered legs. But I didn't have a tapering jig, so I had to make one. And I've got it set up with this little hold down foot as well when I run it through the table saw. So here's my regular stock. And this was 1 3/4 inches thick. So that'll be the widest dimension at the top, and I want to taper down the bottom of each leg. So in my jig, I'm just going to use shims to give me my taper. And when I cut my first 2 dimensions, I've got 4 little tiny shims in there. And when I flip it over to cut the opposite 2 dimensions, because I've already taken material out, I have to double up the shims in order to give me an equal tapered cut. And stuff always falls down in the saw blade. And so again, with that 60-tooth blade, I get a pretty decent clean cut, but there's still going to be some saw marks on the legs, so we just have to grind those off on the belt sander. Or you can use a hand sander as well. And here's how they looked. And because I'm going to build a frame out of plywood, that's going to look pretty ugly, so I decided to cut some 1/16 of an inch strips as veneer. And the challenge that I had was, how do I build a support frame to support these legs that I'm cutting out? And I'm going to build this out of plywood, but I'm going to make it 4 3/4 inch layers thick. And so my inner dimensions, my outer dimensions, And essentially, I'm going to have to cut out 4 of these plywood blanks. And the goal was to leave enough plywood material on the inside where I was going to attach the legs to be able to support the screws that I would put through into the legs. Now what I did was create one good template. I got it all smooth, and then I used that as the guide for using a panel or a flush cutting bit on my router so that all 4 pieces would be the same. You are definitely covered with sawdust. And so the wood was kind of flexible, but I didn't want it to snap back after gluing, so I soaked it in hot water for about 4 hours with a little bit of soap. And when I'm using urethane glue here, the other side of the material is supposed to be wet, and since the wood was already wet from soaking, it turned out to be a great combination to use urethane glue, and you can see it squeeze out between the cracks there. It was a really, really strong bond. I'm glad I used the urethane. And now I needed it to dry so I could get stain on it, and this took a while. Anybody need a clamp? You never have enough clamps. It's kind of a running woodworker's joke. Here's some trimming that I needed to do for this veneer, and this was a big mistake by trying to run this in the table saw. Now, nothing happened, but it wasn't very stable. I really needed to come up with a different way to get this veneer trimmed off. I wouldn't recommend doing what I did here. And now that it's looking pretty cool, it's all trimmed up, I had to secure the legs with cabinet screws, and I like using cabinet screws because they already come with a flat head on one end. They're designed to hold up kitchen cabinets and hold a lot of weight. So for hardware, I kind of like using these for furniture building when you don't have to see the head of the screw. This is all going to be on the underside of the table, so no biggie. It really looks pretty cool just like this. Was pleased how the veneer came out. So to match the design in the movie set, the top of the table looked like it had a tapered edge to it in that one photo. And so I had to take little nibbles out of the top with my 45-degree router bit. And ultimately, I got a pretty good profile on the third pass. And this is where we'll stop after some sanding. So originally I went looking for walnut stock at my favorite wood supplier, but they really didn't have a very good selection. And I like the wood grain of this white ash, and I thought it would stain up really well, as it turns out it did. The wood grain showed very nicely on the top. It absorbed that dark brown stain, and it really looks good. And yes, I wore my crappy jeans because no matter how hard you try, you're going to get stain splatter on your shirt and your pants. I wanted to mention, if you watch the original Deadpool or Deadpool 2, you only catch a glimpse of this table as you move through the scene. It's only when you look at the set design photos do you get a really good picture of this table. And so you have an opportunity to keep it pretty simple. If you want to mimic one of the photos, you can just buy 1x12 piece of pine and these very simple legs and the hardware to screw the legs into, and keep it pretty simple to recreate this piece from the movie. Of course, I chose thicker material and I created my own legs, but if you're just trying to mimic what you can see from the movie set, then this is all you really need to do. And sure enough, now you can show a tapered edge. Here's my spindle legs. I've got the Unicorn magazine on the table, along with a big bowl of wooden dowels as opposed to cigarette butts, and then a couple of other accessories that you saw from the photo. So really pleased, not too bad, but let's take a side-by-side comparison. So a little different angle, but not bad in terms of a movie set recreation. So here's the tabletop with our spindle legs removed in our custom frame. It looks a little bit beefier because it is a little bit beefier, but I also think it fits the table. And although it probably looks a little different from what you saw in the movie set, it's a better piece of furniture. So this is something we can keep in the family. Yeah. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this week's video. And as always, if you like our content, we hope you give us a thumbs up, you subscribe to the channel, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified every time we publish something new. Take care.